street boy offers his last bite of bread to a millionaire, and the response makes him break down. Richard Miller stood motionless on the corner of Fifth Avenue for over 2 hours, tears streaming behind his sunglasses as he watched the city move without really seeing anything. Even in his Italian designer suit, the 42-year-old businessman seemed more lost than any beggar on the streets of New York City. That's when he felt a presence beside him. A skinny boy, about 12 years old, was holding out a piece of still warm bread to him. "Here, mister. You look hungrier than me," the boy said softly. Richard looked at the child in tattered, dirty clothes, his hair tousled by the cold New York morning wind. The boy was holding only half a dinner roll, clearly his only food. "No need, son. Keep your bread," Richard replied, trying to steady his trembling voice. "But you're crying, mister. When you cry from sadness, your stomach hurts worse. My grandma always said that." Those simple words hit Richard like a punch to the chest. Unable to hold back, he broke down in tears right there on the busy sidewalk. Without hesitation, the boy placed his small, dirty hand on the businessman's arm. "Hey, don't cry. It's gonna be okay." The boy's name was Ethan Parker Johnson, a name given to him by the woman who had raised him since he was a baby in a small slum on the South Side. Even though he hadn't eaten in 3 days, he couldn't see someone suffering without trying to help. That's how Miss Grace had taught him. Richard finally composed himself, taking a closer look at the boy who showed such compassion. There was something familiar in those brown eyes, an expression that unsettled him inexplicably. "What's your name, son?" "Ethan. And you?" "Richard. I'm sorry for being like this. Not a good day for me." "Oh, I get it. When I'm sad, Grandma Grace makes really sweet coffee and we talk. It always helps." That name struck Richard like lightning. Grace. It couldn't be a coincidence. So many years had passed, but he would never forget the woman who had worked in his home for 15 years before mysteriously disappearing. "Grace who?" he asked, his voice shaking. "Grace Elizabeth Williams." "Why do you know her?" Richard's world stopped. Grace Elizabeth Williams had been his housekeeper, his children's nanny, practically family, until the day she simply vanished, leaving only a note saying she needed to take care of a child. Where is she now?" he asked, trying to keep his composure. "At Downtown Memorial Hospital. She's really sick. That's why I'm out here trying to get money for her medicine." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing, Richard felt the ground give way beneath him. All these years he had wondered what had happened to Grace. She had left right after his messy separation from his first wife, Jennifer, leaving him alone with 3 young children and a broken heart. "Ethan, I need to tell you something. I knew your grandma. She worked for me for many years." The boy looked at him in surprise, but without suspicion. There was a purity in his gaze that Richard had lost long ago. "Really?" She always talked about a family she took care of, said those were the happiest years of her life, that she had 3 kids she loved, like they were her own grandkids. Tears welled up in Richard's eyes again. Grace had always been more than just a housekeeper to his family. She comforted the children when they cried, helped with homework, and made each one's favorite dishes. When Jennifer left him taking the children to another state, Grace was his only support. "Why did she leave?" whispered Ethan. "It's a long story, son, but now I need to see her. Can you take me to the hospital?" Ethan hesitated for a moment, studying the face of the man before him. There was something in the way Richard spoke about his grandmother that put him at ease. "All right, but first, you need to eat something. Grandma always says sad people make bad decisions." Richard smiled for the first time in weeks. That boy had the same simple wisdom as Grace, the same ability to see beyond appearances. They walked to a nearby bakery, where Richard bought sandwiches for both of them. As they ate, Ethan told his story. Grace had found him as a baby, abandoned on the steps of a church. Without hesitation, she took him home and raised him as if he were her own grandson. "She never talked about my real parents. Only said they couldn't take care of me, but that they loved me very much. Sometimes I dream that one day they'll come looking for me." Those words pierced Richard's heart. He thought of his own children, now living far away with their mother. How long had it been since he'd seen them? 6 months? A year? Work and the bitterness of the separation had consumed all his days. During the taxi ride to the hospital, Ethan kept talking about Grace, how she sewed clothes to make ends meet, how she taught him to read using old magazines, how she threw simple but loving birthday parties. "She's been in the hospital for a week. The doctors say she needs surgery, but it's very expensive. I tried selling candy on the street, but I can't save up enough." Richard felt a deep ache in his chest. Grace was suffering while he drowned in self-pity over his company's financial troubles. Yes, he was struggling, but it was nothing compared to what they were facing. General Hospital was as busy as ever. Ethan knew the way well, greeting nurses and security guards as if he belonged there. It was clear he spent a lot of time there. "Room 237, she's happy when she gets visitors," Ethan said, stopping in front of a door. Richard took a deep breath before entering. He didn't know what to expect after so many years. When he saw Grace lying in bed, frail and aged, the tears returned. She was asleep, breathing with difficulty. "Grandma, I brought you a visitor," Ethan whispered. Grace opened her eyes slowly, and when she saw Richard, her expression changed completely. Surprise, emotion, and something that looked like fear mixed on her face. "Mr. Richard, how did you find me? Grace, my God, how I've missed you." Ethan watched the scene without fully understanding the intensity of this reunion. To him, his grandmother was just receiving a visit from a former employer, but there was something more in their gazes, a story he didn't know. "Ethan, my dear, can you give us a moment to talk?" Grace asked weakly. The boy left the room but stayed by the door, watching through the glass. He could see the two adults talking intensely, his grandmother crying, the man holding her hands. "Why did you leave, Grace? Why didn't you say anything?" Richard asked. The woman closed her eyes as if gathering strength to tell a truth she'd kept for 12 years. "Mr. Richard, I couldn't stay. Not after what I found out." "What did you find out?" "About Ethan. About who he really is." Richard's blood ran cold. There was something in Grace's tone that warned him of a revelation that would change everything. "What do you mean? Do you remember that day, when Mrs. Emily left the house with the children for the last time? You were away on a business trip." Richard remembered perfectly. He had just returned from a business trip in Washington, D.C., to find the house empty, only a note from Jennifer saying she couldn't take it anymore and was taking the children away. It was the darkest day of his life. "I remember. It was the worst day of my life. That same day, Mr. Richard, I found a baby at the door of the church I go to every Sunday. A newborn boy with a blank birth certificate and a blanket I recognized." Richard's heart began to race. "What blanket?" "The one Mrs. Jennifer bought when she was pregnant with the last baby. The blue one with yellow embroidery that she always insisted on using to swaddle the children." The world spun around Richard. Jennifer had gotten pregnant again shortly before leaving him, but he had been so consumed by work and the problems in their marriage that he barely paid attention. When she left, he assumed she had taken all the children. "Grace, are you saying that—" "I'm saying Mrs. Jennifer left Ethan at the church before she left, and I knew he was your son from the very first day." The silence that followed was deafening. Richard looked through the glass and saw Ethan sitting in the hallway, swinging his legs like any child his age. His son, his own son, who had been living in poverty while he drowned in self-pity. "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you bring the boy to me?" Grace sighed heavily. "Because I was afraid, Mr. Richard. Afraid you wouldn't want him, just like Mrs. Jennifer didn't. Afraid he'd be rejected again. He was just a baby, he didn't deserve any of it. But Grace, he's my son. I had the right to know. You had the right, but Ethan had the right to be loved. And at the time, with all due respect, you weren't in any state to love anyone. You were too hurt." Richard knew she was right. In the months after the separation, he had become a bitter man, consumed by work and alcohol. Maybe he really hadn't been ready to raise a baby alone. And now, what do I do now, Grace? Now you have a second chance, but it's not just about you. It's about Ethan. He loves me like a grandmother. I'm the only family he knows. Any change has to be handled carefully. Richard looked again at the boy in the hallway. Ethan was talking to a nurse, probably asking about his grandmother's condition. There was a sweetness in his gestures, a kindness that clearly came from Grace's upbringing. Does he know anything about me? Nothing. I always told him his parents couldn't take care of him but loved him very much. I didn't lie, I just didn't tell the whole truth. And the other children. Do you know if Jennifer... I don't know anything about them, Mr. Richard. After I found Ethan, my life became about raising him. I didn't look for information about the family. Richard stood up from the chair, pacing back and forth in the small room. His mind was a whirlwind of emotions and thoughts. Anger at missing 12 years of his son's life. Guilt for not searching for Grace when she disappeared. Gratitude that she had raised Ethan with so much love. Grace, I need to tell him. He has the right to know who his father is. He does. But go slowly, Mr. Richard. Ethan is a sensitive boy. He'll need time to process all of this. Just then, Ethan returned to the room, bringing water for his grandmother. Grandma, the nurse said you can have this. She also said the doctor will come by later to talk about the surgery. Grace and Richard exchanged a meaningful look. The surgery cost $30,000, an impossible sum for them, but nothing for Richard to handle. Ethan, said Richard, choosing his words carefully, your grandma and I have something important to talk to you about. The boy sat in the chair beside the bed, looking back and forth between the two adults. Is it about the surgery? Did you manage to get the money together? It's not just about that, my boy, said Grace, taking Ethan's hand. It's about your family. Your real family. Ethan tensed up. His whole life he had imagined the moment he would learn about his birth parents. But now that it was here, he felt afraid. Mr. Richard, he isn't just someone I knew a long time ago. He's your father, Ethan. The silence that followed seemed to last forever. Ethan looked at Richard, then at Grace, trying to process the information. My father? My real father? Yes, son. Your real father, Richard confirmed, his voice choked with emotion. Ethan sat completely still for a few seconds, as if trying to fit together the pieces of a puzzle he had carried his whole life. Why didn't you ever look for me? The question pierced Richard's heart. How could he explain to a child that he hadn't even known he existed? Because I didn't know you existed, Ethan. Your mother. She left and never told me about you. All these years, I thought she had only taken your siblings. I have siblings? Yes, 2 brothers and a sister, Michael, Emily, and Jason, but they live far from here with your mother. Ethan soaked up every word like a sponge. His whole life he had wondered about his family, and now he was learning he had a father, a mother, and siblings. Why did my mother leave me at the church? That was the hardest question of all. Grace stepped in. Sometimes, my boy, grown-ups make difficult choices when they're hurting badly. Your mother was going through a very hard time and she thought it would be best for you. She didn't want me? Tears began rolling down Ethan's face. Richard felt his heart break seeing the boy's pain. It's not that she didn't want you, Ethan, it's just sometimes people make decisions when they're scared and confused. That doesn't mean they don't love you. And you? Do you want me now? Richard knelt beside the boy's chair, taking his small, dirty hands in his own. Ethan, I want you more than anything in the world. I'm so sorry I wasn't here all these years. I'm so sorry you've had to go through so much. But now that I know you exist, I'll never leave you alone again. Ethan looked deep into Richard's eyes as if searching for any sign of a lie, but all he saw was sincerity and love. Does this mean I won't live with Grandma anymore? It means we'll take care of Grandma together, Richard replied, and that you'll have a father who loves you very much and will do everything to make up for lost time. Grace smiled through her tears. She could see Ethan was handling it all maturely, but she knew it would be a difficult adjustment for everyone. And my siblings, can I meet them? Of course you can. We'll find a way for you all to meet. But one thing at a time, okay? Ethan nodded, still trying to take it all in. Then, in a move so typical of a child, he asked the question that mattered most to him in that moment. "Dad, can I call you Dad?" "Yes, son, you can. Yes." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. The following days were a whirlwind of emotions and adjustments. Richard immediately took care of all the costs for Grace's surgery, making sure she received the best possible treatment. He also arranged for an apartment near the hospital so Ethan wouldn't have to live in the slum anymore. But the transition wasn't easy. Ethan, despite being smart and mature for his age, was still a child who had spent his whole life in poverty. The spacious, well-furnished apartment made him uncomfortable at first. "It's so big, Dad. What if I get lost in here?" Ethan said on the first night, curled up in a bed that was larger than the entire room he used to sleep in before. Richard smiled, remembering when his other children were little and had similar fears. "Do you want to sleep in the living room tonight? We can set up a mattress on the floor and watch TV until you fall asleep." "Really? Grandma always did that when I had nightmares. They spent the night talking about everything and nothing." Ethan asked 1,000 questions about his siblings, about Richard's life, about what his new routine would be like. Richard, in turn, wanted to know everything about the 12 years he had missed of his son's life. "Ethan, tell me about your schooling. Do you like to study?" "Grandma taught me to read at home. I never went to a real school, but she said once she got better, she'd enroll me." Richard felt a pang of sadness. His son was clearly intelligent, but had missed years of formal education. "How about we start looking for a good school for you? Do you think I'll be able to keep up with the other kids? I don't know much about the subjects they teach in school." "I'm sure you will, and if you need help, I'll be here. Or we can hire tutors to help you catch up." Ethan grew thoughtful for a moment. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Of course, son. Ask me anything." "Why are you being so nice to me? I'm just some street kid you just met." The question broke Richard's heart. The child had been abandoned so early that he couldn't believe he deserved unconditional love. "Ethan, you're not just some street kid. You're my son. You're the most important person in the world to me right now. And even if you weren't, you'd still deserve love and kindness just for being who you are." Grandma always said that I was special and deserved good things, but sometimes it's hard to believe. "I understand, son, but little by little you'll see it's true. Now tell me something. What do you love doing the most?" Ethan smiled for the first time since arriving at the apartment. "I like to draw and to help people. In the slum, I always helped the elderly neighbors carry their groceries or fetched medicine for those who were sick." "Do you have your drawings? Can I see them?" Ethan ran to the small backpack he'd brought with him and pulled out an old stained notebook. The pages were filled with drawings made with worn-out colored pencils, but they had an impressive artistic quality for a self-taught child. "Ethan, these drawings are amazing. You have real talent. Grandma always said that. She dreamed of me studying art at a good school." "Then that's what we'll do. We'll find the best art school in New York City, and you'll learn everything you want about drawing and painting." Ethan's eyes shone with a hope he hadn't felt in a long time. In the days that followed, they settled into a routine. They visited Grace every morning at the hospital, where she was recovering well from surgery. In the afternoon, Ethan explored the apartment and the neighborhood with Richard, getting to know his new world. At night, they had dinner together and talked until Ethan fell asleep. But not everything was easy. Ethan still woke up in the middle of the night looking for Grace. He had nightmares about being abandoned again. At times, he wondered if Richard would really stay, or if all of this was temporary. One morning, 2 weeks after the revelation, Ethan woke up unusually quiet. "What's going on, son?" Richard asked during breakfast. "Dad, can I ask you a hard question?" "Of course." "If my mother shows up one day and wants to take me back, what will happen?" Richard stopped eating, realizing the time had come for an even more serious conversation with Ethan. "Ethan, your mother made a very difficult decision when you were a baby. She gave up the responsibility of being your mother. That means I'm your legal guardian now and no one can take you away from me without my permission." But what if I want to meet her? If you want to, we'll find a way to make that happen. But it'll be when you're ready, not when she decides. The difference is that now you have a choice. Ethan seemed to relax at this answer. And my brothers? Do they know I exist? No, Ethan. When your mother left, she didn't tell them about you. But I think they have the right to know they have another brother. Are you going to tell them? We'll tell them together when you feel ready. How about we call them tonight? Ethan felt nervous and excited at the same time. The idea of meeting his brothers thrilled him, but it also scared him. That afternoon, while visiting Grace, Richard shared his plans to reach out to his other children. I think it's a good idea, Grace said. Ethan has always wanted siblings. He'll be so happy. Grandma, what if they don't like me? Ethan asked. My dear, how could anyone not like you? You're kind, smart, and polite. Your brothers will love you just like your father and I do. That night, Richard dialed the number he hadn't used in months. On the other end of the line, Emily, his 15-year-old daughter, answered. Dad, is it really you? Hi, Emily. How are you, sweetheart? I'm okay. I missed you. Why don't you call anymore? Richard felt a tightness in his chest. He had distanced himself from his children because of his own pain, but they had suffered too. Emily, Dad was going through a hard time, but things are better now, and I have some very important news to tell you and your brothers. What news? You have a brother. The silence on the other end lasted nearly a minute. A brother? What do you mean? It's a long story, honey, but his name is Ethan. He's 12, and until 2 weeks ago, I didn't even know he existed. Dad, I don't understand. How could you have a son and not know? Richard explained everything to Emily, who listened quietly. When he finished, she called her brothers to the phone and he repeated the story. Dad, we want to meet our brother, said Michael, 17. And when will that happen? Asked Jason, the youngest at 13. How about next weekend? I can bring him to you, or you can come to New York City. We want to go to New York City, the three said in unison. Ethan, who had been listening to everything, smiled for the first time in days. His brothers wanted to meet him. That meant maybe he really had a family now. Kids, let me talk to your mother, Richard said. Jennifer answered the phone coldly. Richard, it's been a while. Jennifer, I know things didn't end well between us, but we need to talk about something very important. The boys told me about this boy. I don't know why you're making up this story. I'm not making anything up, Jennifer. Ethan is your son too. The son you left at the church before you walked away. The silence that followed was tense and heavy with emotion. How did you find out? So it's true. You really abandoned him. Richard, you don't understand what I was going through. You had become impossible to live with. I couldn't take care of 4 children alone. But why didn't you tell me? Why did you leave him at the church? Because I knew you wouldn't want another child. You barely paid attention to the ones you already had. Richard knew she was right about his behavior back then, but that didn't justify abandoning Ethan. Jennifer, that was 12 years ago. We're different people now. Ethan wants to meet his brothers and they want to meet him. Are you going to stop that? I need to think. It's a lot to process. I understand. But the boys are coming to New York City this weekend to meet their brother. You can join us if you'd like. After hanging up, Richard turned to Ethan, who was visibly anxious. So, son, how are you feeling? Scared. What if my mom doesn't want to see me? What if she's angry that I even exist? Ethan, no matter what your mother feels or doesn't feel, what matters is that you have 3 brothers who are eager to meet you and a father who loves you very much. Dad, can I tell you a secret? Of course. Sometimes I dream that I have a big family, with lots of brothers who all like me. Do you think that dream could come true? Richard hugged Ethan tightly. I'll do everything in my power to make it happen, son. The weekend came quickly. Richard and Ethan went to pick up the other boys at the airport. When Ethan saw 3 people approaching, he immediately noticed the resemblance between them. They all had the same brown eyes and the same face shape. Emily was the first to step forward. At 15, she was nearly a woman, but still carried the sweetness of childhood. "You must be Ethan," she said, smiling. "I am," Ethan replied shyly. "I'm Emily. It's so nice to meet you, little brother." Michael and Jason came next. Michael, more serious and observant, studied Ethan for a few seconds before smiling. "You look like us," he said. Jason, the most outgoing, didn't hesitate to hug Ethan. "Finally, I have a younger brother. Now I'm not the baby anymore." The chemistry between them was instant. On the way home, Ethan told them about his life in the slum, about Grace, and how he'd discovered Richard was his father. His brothers, in turn, shared about their life in Boston, school and friends. "Ethan, are you going to come live with us in Boston?" Emily asked. Ethan glanced at Richard, unsure how to answer. "Actually, Emily, Ethan's going to stay here in New York City with me, but you can visit each other whenever you want." "But why? We're family. We should be together," Michael protested. "It's complicated, son. Ethan has his life here. He has Grandma Grace, who's recovering, and you have your life there with your mom." "Dad, can I say something?" Ethan spoke up. "Of course. I want to meet my mom, but I want to stay here with you and Grandma. New York City is my home now." His brothers were a little sad but understood Ethan's decision. Over the weekend, they went to parks, malls and restaurants. Ethan had never tried many of the foods his brothers considered normal. He'd never been to a mall, never gone to the movies. "Ethan, you've never had pizza?" Jason asked, shocked. "Never. Grandma and I always ate rice, beans and whatever we could buy at the market." It was a painful reminder for everyone of how Ethan had grown up in hardship while they'd lived comfortably. "Dad, why did Ethan live like that if you have money?" Emily asked. "Because I didn't know he existed, sweetheart. If I had, I would never have let him go through that." On Sunday, the last day of the visit, they went to the hospital to meet Grace. The woman was moved to see her other adopted grandchildren, as she now called them. "You take good care of Ethan, okay? He's a special boy," she said. "We will, Grandma Grace," Emily promised. Ethan was happy his brothers accepted Grace as their grandmother. To him, it meant his family was truly united. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. When the time came to say goodbye, everyone was emotional. "Ethan, we'll talk on the phone every day," promised Emily. "And next vacation, you'll come to Boston to visit us," said Michael. "Or you can come back here," Ethan replied. Richard watched the scene with a full heart. His children were united, despite everything that had happened. But the meeting with Jennifer was still to come. She had decided to visit New York City the following week to meet Ethan in person. During that week, Ethan grew increasingly nervous. He asked countless questions about his mother, what she was like, why she had made the decision to leave him. "Dad, what if she looks at me and regrets giving me up? What if she wants to take me with her?" "Ethan, that won't happen. You're staying with me, remember? But it's important for you to meet your mother, even if just once. What if she doesn't like me? Son, anyone who doesn't like you is the one with the problem, not you." Grace had been discharged from the hospital and was now recovering in the apartment Richard had rented for her close to his own. She too was nervous about the meeting between Ethan and Jennifer. "Mr. Richard, does Miss Jennifer know I raised Ethan all these years?" "She does, Grace, and she'll have to thank you for it." "I don't want thanks, I just want her to see the wonderful boy Ethan has become." The day of the meeting arrived. Jennifer had arrived the night before and was staying at a nearby hotel. Richard and Ethan met her at a neutral cafe, where they could have privacy to talk. When Jennifer saw Ethan for the first time in 12 years, her legs nearly gave out. The boy looked just like a young Richard, but he had her eyes and her smile. "Ethan," she said in a trembling voice. "Hi, Mom," Ethan replied, unsure whether to hug her or not. Jennifer burst into tears immediately. Years of pent-up emotions came rushing out. "My God, how you've grown, how handsome you are!" Ethan looked at Richard, seeking guidance on how to react. "Mum, why did you leave me at the church?" That direct question from a 12-year-old hit Jennifer like a punch to the gut. "Ethan, I was going through a very hard time in my life. Your father and I weren't getting along. I was pregnant, and scared I couldn't take care of you. But you took care of my brothers. I did, but with a lot of struggle, and I thought it would be better for you to have a chance with a family who could give you more love and care. But Grandma Grace didn't have money. We went through a lot." Jennifer looked at Richard as if asking for help, but he was determined to let her face the consequences of her choices. "I didn't know that, Ethan. I hoped someone better off would adopt you." "Did you ever want to know what happened to me?" "I did. Many times I went back to the church to ask, but they couldn't give me information. I suffered so much over the decision I made." Ethan stayed silent for a few minutes, processing everything. "Mum, do you regret leaving me there?" "I do, Ethan. Every day I think about how things could have been different." "Then why didn't you ever reach out to Dad to tell him about me?" "Because I was too proud, and scared too. Scared he wouldn't want you, just like I thought I couldn't." Richard finally stepped into the conversation. "Jennifer, Ethan is our son. He deserved to be raised by both of us, with his siblings. You took that chance away from him, and from me." "I know, Richard. I know I made a terrible mistake, but at the time I was desperate and alone." "Were you really alone?" Ethan asked. "I was. Your father worked too much. He was hardly ever home. When he was, we fought a lot. I felt abandoned even though I was married." Richard knew she was right about that too. He had prioritized work over family, contributing to the end of their marriage. "Ethan," Jennifer said, "I know I don't have the right to ask for forgiveness after everything you've been through, but I want you to know I love you. I always have, even though I made the wrong choice. Mum, I forgive you. But not because you deserve forgiveness, but because Grandma Grace taught me that holding on to anger only hurts the one who holds it." Those words showed the maturity and wisdom Ethan had developed despite his young age. "Can I hug you?" Jennifer asked. Ethan looked at Richard again, who gave a supportive nod. The boy stood up and let his mother hug him for the first time in 12 years. "You're an amazing boy, Ethan. Much stronger and wiser than I was at your age. Grandma Grace taught me to be this way. I'd really like to meet the woman who raised my son." Richard and Ethan exchanged glances. They hadn't planned for Jennifer to meet Grace, but maybe it was important for closing this chapter. "If you'd like, I can take you to meet Grandma," Ethan said. On the way to Grace's house, Jennifer asked countless questions about Ethan's life. She wanted to know about his upbringing, his likes, his fears, his dreams. It was as if she was trying to make up for 12 years in one afternoon. When they arrived at the apartment, Grace welcomed them with dignity and elegance, despite her humble background. "Miss Jennifer," she said, "it's a pleasure to meet you in person." "Grace, I don't even know how to begin thanking you for everything you've done for Ethan." "You don't have to thank me. Ethan has been a blessing in my life. He's given me purpose and joy all these years. Even so, you did what I should have done. You were the mother he needed when I didn't have the courage to be." Grace invited Jennifer to sit and offered her coffee. "Miss Jennifer, may I ask you something?" "Of course." "What led you to make the decision to leave Ethan at the church?" Jennifer took a deep breath before answering. "Fear, Grace. Fear of not being a good mother to 4 children. Fear that Richard would reject me even more if I showed up with another child. Fear that Ethan would suffer because of my problems. And now, are you still afraid?" "Now I'm afraid Ethan won't forgive me, and afraid it's too late to be part of his life." Grace looked at Ethan, who was listening intently. "Ethan, what do you think? Can your mother be part of your life?" Ethan thought for a few minutes before answering. "Grandma, you always taught me that everyone deserves a second chance. If my mom wants to try to be a real mother to me now, I can try to be her son." Jennifer began to cry again, this time with relief and gratitude. "But," Ethan continued, "I want to keep living here with my dad and visiting you every day. This is my home now." "I understand completely," Jennifer said. "You've built a life here. I won't try to change that. But you can visit us whenever you want, and I can come stay with you and my siblings during breaks. You'd like that?" "I would. I've always wanted a big family." Richard watched everything in silence, impressed by Ethan's maturity and moved by how Grace handled the delicate situation. "Grace," Jennifer said, "how can I ever repay you for everything you've done?" "You don't have to repay me, Miss Jennifer. But if you want to do something, take good care of Ethan from now on. Be the mother he deserves to have." "I promise I'll try." Grace stood up and brought out an old shoebox. "Ethan, it's time for you to know your whole story." The woman opened the box, revealing photos, documents, and small objects saved over the years. "These are pictures of you as a baby. This one is from the day I found you," she said, showing a photo of newborn Ethan sleeping. Ethan carefully took the photo, examining it closely. "I was so small." "You were, and so beautiful. From the very first day, I knew you were special." "What else is in the box, Grandma?" "There's the blanket you were wrapped in when I found you, the first outfit I bought for you, your drawings from age 3 onward." Ethan rummaged through the box curiously, discovering objects that told the story of his life. "Grandma, why did you save all this?" "Because I always knew one day you'd want to know your full story, and because each of these things represents a happy moment we shared." Jennifer watched silently, seeing how Grace had documented every phase of Ethan's life. It was something she, as his birth mother, should have done. "Grace, can I see his drawings?" "Of course." Grace spread dozens of drawings across the table. They showed Ethan's artistic growth over the years, from childish scribbles to surprisingly detailed works for his age. "Ethan, you have an amazing talent," Jennifer said. "Grandma always encouraged me to draw. She said art was a way to talk to God." "And it is," Grace agreed. "That's why your father is enrolling you in an art school now, to develop your gift." "Dad, really?" Ethan asked excitedly. "Yes, son. I've already picked out a few schools for us to visit." The rest of the afternoon flew by as Jennifer learned more about Ethan's personality and interests. She discovered he loved reading, excelled in math, and had a sharp sense of humor. When it was time for Jennifer to return to the hotel, Ethan hugged her spontaneously. "Mom, thank you for coming to meet me. Thank you for giving me a second chance, son. Will you come back?" "If you want me to, I will." "I do. And I want you to meet my friends from the slum too. They're really cool." Jennifer smiled, realizing Ethan wasn't ashamed of his roots. He embraced them with pride. After Jennifer left, Grace, Richard, and Ethan talked about the meeting. "How did you feel seeing your mother, Ethan?" Richard asked. "It was strange but good. She seems like a good person who made a bad decision." "Now, how do you want our family to work?" Ethan thought for a few minutes. "I want everyone to get along. I want to visit my siblings, talk to my mom, but I want to keep living here with you and visiting Grandma every day." "Sounds like a great plan," Grace said. "Grandma, can I ask you something?" "Of course, my grandson." "Do you regret raising me? Was it really hard?" Grace took Ethan's hands and looked deep into his eyes. "Ethan, you've been the greatest joy of my life. I don't regret a single second of raising you. It was hard sometimes, yes, but it was the most rewarding experience I've ever had. Even when we struggled? Even then, because true wealth isn't in money, it's in love, and we've always had plenty of love for each other." Richard watched the conversation with tears in his eyes. Grace had taught Ethan values he himself had lost over the years, focusing only on work and money. "Grace, I have a proposal for you," Richard said. "What proposal?" "I want you to come live with us. Ethan needs you close by, and I also need to learn from you about how to be a better father." "Mr. Richard, I don't want to be a bother." "You wouldn't be a bother. You'd be a blessing. Ethan grew up with you. You're part of his family, and now you're part of mine too." Ethan was moved by the offer. "Grandma, please come live with us. That way I can take care of you, and you can help me with my homework from the new school." Grace smiled, touched by the proposal. "All right, but I want to keep doing my sewing work. I don't want to sit idle." "Of course, Grace, and if you'd like, I can help you set up a small atelier at home." In the following months, a new routine took shape. Ethan started attending a private school near home, where he quickly excelled in both regular subjects and art classes. Richard hired tutors to help him catch up on some material, but was amazed by how easily the boy learned. Grace adjusted well to life in the larger apartment and set up a small atelier where she sewed for a few clients. But her main role was taking care of the house and helping Ethan with his studies. The relationship between Ethan and Jennifer evolved gradually. She visited New York City every 2 months, and Ethan spent 2 weeks of vacation in Boston with his siblings. They got along well, but everyone understood that Grace had been the one who played the role of mother in the boy's life. Richard discovered that having Ethan in his life had made him a better person. The boy taught him about generosity, appreciating the simple things, and the importance of family. In return, Richard strived to be the best father possible, actively participating in his son's education and interests. "Dad, can I tell you something?" Ethan said one night as they worked on homework together. "Of course, son. I think everything happened the way it was supposed to." "Why?" "Because if I hadn't lived in the slum with Grandma, I wouldn't be the person I am today. And if you hadn't gone through all those hardships, maybe you wouldn't be the dad you are now." Richard was struck by the wisdom in those words from a 12-year-old. "You're right, Ethan. Sometimes the hardest path leads us to the right place. And I think we found each other at the right time, when we were both ready to truly love each other." That conversation stayed with Richard. Ethan hadn't just taught him about fatherhood, but about life, forgiveness, and second chances. Ethan's school organized an end-of-year student art exhibition. He was very nervous because it would be the first time his work was seen by a larger audience. "Dad, what if no one likes my drawings?" "Ethan, your drawings are amazing, but even if someone doesn't like them, that doesn't take away your talent or your worth." "Grandma always said that too, because it's true. What matters is that you love what you do and take pride in your work." On the day of the exhibition, the whole family was there. Richard, Grace, and even Jennifer, who had come especially for the event. Ethan had chosen 5 drawings to display, including a portrait of the whole family together. "Ethan, this family drawing is beautiful," Jennifer said, studying the piece. "Thank you, Mom. I drew everyone together because that's how I see our family now." In the drawing were Ethan, Richard, Grace, Jennifer, Emily, Michael, and Jason, all smiling and holding hands. "You even included me, even though I don't live here," Jennifer noted, moved. "Of course. You're my mom. Just because you didn't live with me doesn't mean you're not part of the family." Throughout the exhibition, many people praised Ethan's work. A man approached Richard. "Are you Ethan's father?" "Yes, I am. I'm an art professor at New York University. Your son's work is exceptional for his age. He has the potential to become a great artist." Richard smiled, proud of his son. "He's always had talent. He just needed the opportunity to develop it. If he keeps studying and dedicating himself, he can go very far." When they told Ethan about the university professor's praise, the boy beamed. "Dad, does this mean I can really become a true artist?" "It means you can become anything you want, son. What matters is that you keep dreaming and working hard." That night, after everyone had gone to sleep, Richard stayed alone in the living room, reflecting on everything that had happened over the past few months. His life had completely changed since that morning when he found Ethan on the corner of 5th Avenue. Grace approached, carrying 2 cups of tea. "Can't sleep, Mr. Richard?" "I'm just thinking, Grace, about how unpredictable life is." "It really is. Who would have thought that boy who offered me a piece of bread would change our lives like this?" "Grace, can I ask you a personal question?" "Of course. You don't regret dedicating the best years of your life to raising Ethan? You could have started your own family, had your own children." Grace smiled tenderly. "Mr. Richard, Ethan is my son. He may not have come from my womb, but he came from my heart. I didn't give up anything. I gained everything. But it must have been so hard raising him alone in poverty." "It was hard, yes, but every struggle was worth it when I saw his smile. When he came home telling me about something new he'd learned. When he hugged me before bed and said he loved me." Richard realized Grace had experienced a kind of wealth he was only now discovering, the wealth of unconditional love. "Grace, thank you for taking care of my son as if he were your own. And thank you for giving me the chance to keep being his grandmother." They sat in silence for a few minutes, each lost in thought. "Mr. Richard, can I give you some advice?" "Of course." "Don't let work consume your life again. Ethan needs a present father, not just a provider. You're right, I made that mistake once with my other children. I won't repeat it. Ethan is a special child. He has a big heart and a generous soul, but he also needs affection and attention. I know, and I promise I'll give him everything I couldn't give the others when they were little. A few days later, Richard received an unexpected call. It was Emily, his 15-year-old daughter. Dad, can I tell you something? Of course, sweetheart. Michael, Jason and I talked, and we want to spend next summer break there in New York City with you and Ethan. That would be wonderful. Did you talk to your mum about it? We did. She thought it was a good idea, said it's important for us to spend more time together as a family. And what do you want to do here? We want to get to know Ethan's life better, see his school, meet his friends, understand how he lived before. Richard was moved by his children's interest in Ethan's world. I'm sure he'll be very happy. Dad, can I tell you something else? Of course. Ethan reminded me how good it is to have family. Over the last few years, with the divorce and everything, I kind of forgot that. Emily, I'm so sorry you all went through that. I know it was hard for everyone. It was. But now we have a second chance to be a real family, don't we? Yes, sweetheart, and I won't waste this chance. When they told Ethan about his siblings' visit, he was ecstatic. Dad, can they see the art school? And Grandma's studio? And the slum where I used to live? You can show them everything, son. They want to understand who you are and where you came from. And can I introduce them to my friends? Of course you can. Ethan spent the next few days planning everything he wanted to show his siblings. He was especially eager to introduce them to his friends from the slum, which he still visited regularly to bring sweets and toys. Grandma, what do I do if my siblings feel ashamed of the slum? My dear, if they feel ashamed, it's because they don't yet understand where your strength and kindness come from. But what if they think I'm different from them? You are different from them, Ethan. You know a reality they've never experienced. That's nothing to be ashamed of, it's something to be proud of. How so? You've learned to appreciate the simple things, to be grateful for what you have, to help those in need. Those are lessons they can learn from you. The July break arrived quickly. The three siblings came to New York City, excited to spend a whole month with Ethan and Richard. This time, Jennifer also came and rented a nearby apartment to stay close to everyone. On the first day, Ethan took his siblings to visit his art school. The teacher made sure to show some of the work Ethan had recently done. Wow, Ethan, you draw better than a lot of adults, said Michael, impressed. I learned from Grandma, she always encouraged me. And what do you want to be when you grow up? Asked Jason. I want to be an artist. I want to make drawings that make people happy. Emily watched Ethan's dedication to his studies and art with admiration. Ethan, do you study a lot? I do. Dad said, education is the one thing no one can take away from you. He's right. But do you have fun too? Of course. I play with my friends, I play soccer, I read comics. And now that you're here, we're going to have so much fun. On the second day, Ethan took them to see the slum where he had grown up. Richard was initially uneasy about how his other children would react, but decided to trust Ethan's judgment. Dad, can I show them the little house where I lived with Grandma? Of course, son. But remember, other people live there now. I know. I just want them to see it. When they arrived at the slum, Ethan was greeted warmly by all the neighbors. It was clear he was loved and respected there. Ethan, how are you, dear? Said an elderly woman. I'm good, Mrs. Johnson. These are my siblings, Emily, Michael, and Jason. Your siblings, how wonderful, welcome. Ethan always talked about you. Emily, Michael, and Jason were surprised by the warm welcome they received. They expected to find bitter or resentful people, but were met with smiles and hospitality. Ethan, Emily whispered, everyone here loves you. It's because Grandma taught me to treat everyone with respect and kindness, and because they watched me grow up. How could you be happy living here? Because happiness doesn't depend on the size of your house or how many things you have. It depends on the people you love and who love you. That answer left his siblings thoughtful. They had grown up with material comforts, but might have lost something Ethan had kept, the ability to be grateful for simple things. Want to see where I slept? Ethan asked, pointing to a small house. Won't it bother the people living there now? No, I already talked to them. They're Grandma's friends. The house had only 2 small rooms, but was clean and tidy. It was hard to imagine Ethan and Grace living in such a tight space. Ethan, where did you sleep? Asked Jason. In that bed over there. Grandma and I shared it. And where did you study? At the kitchen table. At night, after Grandma finished sewing. Michael observed everything in silence, clearly moved by the simplicity of the place. Ethan, didn't you feel sad living here? Sometimes I did, especially when I saw other kids with things I didn't have. But Grandma always said God had given me other riches. What riches? Health, intelligence, a good heart, and most of all, her love. During the visit, Ethan introduced his siblings to several children from the slum. Some were clearly underfed and dressed in old clothes, but they played and smiled like any child. Ethan, do you still help these kids? Jennifer asked. I do. Every month, Dad and I come here to bring candy, toys, and clothes. Can I help too? Of course. The more people helping, the better. On the way back, the siblings talked about everything they had seen. Dad, Michael said, how could we have lived so comfortably without ever thinking about people in need? Michael, it's not your fault for not knowing this reality. But now that you do, you can choose to make a difference. I want to help Ethan with his projects, Jennifer said. Me too, Michael and Jason agreed. Ethan smiled, happy to see his siblings moved by the situation in the slum. You know what we can do? Ethan said. We can organize a party for the kids there, with food, toys, music. Great idea, Richard said. Let's plan it together. In the following days, the 4 siblings worked together planning the party. Jennifer suggested games, Michael handled logistics, Jason picked music, and Ethan designed personalized invitations. Ethan, Jennifer said one evening, you've taught me something very important these days. What? That being rich has nothing to do with money. You're the richest person I know. Why? Because you have love, friends, family, talents, and most of all, you know how to be grateful for it all. Grandma always said gratitude is the secret to happiness. She was right. I want to learn to be more grateful for what I have. The party in the slum was a success. Over 50 children came, along with their parents and guardians. Richard hired a barbecue cook, bought toys, and even rented a bounce house. Ethan, said Mrs. Johnson, their elderly neighbor, you brought so much joy to our kids today. It was my siblings' idea too, Mrs. Johnson. They're very kind. You have a beautiful family, son. God has blessed you. Ethan looked around and saw his siblings playing with the slum kids, his father talking with the adults, Grace handing out candy, and Emily helping serve food. It truly was a beautiful family, despite all the hardships they'd faced. Dad, Ethan said at the end of the day, thank you for making all this possible. Ethan, you're the one who made it possible, with your kindness and the way you see the world. No, Dad, it was love. The love Grandma gave me, the love you give me, the love my siblings give me. That's what makes everything possible. Richard hugged Ethan, moved by his son's wisdom. You're right, son. Love really is what makes everything possible. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, Richard found himself alone in the living room again. But this time his thoughts were completely different. Instead of sadness and bitterness, he felt gratitude and hope. Grace appeared again with 2 cups of tea. Today was a special day, she said. It really was. Seeing all those happy kids, seeing my children working together, it was beautiful. Ethan is so happy to have his siblings here. Me too. I feel like we finally have a real family. You always did, Mr. Richard. You just needed to find each other again. Grace, can I ask you something else? Of course. Do you think Emily has really changed? Or is she just trying to make up for guilt? Grace thought for a few moments before answering. I do think she's changed, but I also think she was always a good person who made poor choices when she was hurting. And how can you forgive so easily? Because holding on to resentment is like carrying a stone on your back. It only weighs you down. Ethan learned that from you. Ethan was born with a pure heart. I just helped him keep that purity. And now, how do you see our family's future? I see a future full of love and joy, with ups and downs, like every family, but always united by love. On the last day of vacation, everyone was sad to say goodbye. The siblings had formed even stronger bonds with Ethan, and he was reluctant to see them go. "Ethan," said Emily, "we'll keep talking every day on the phone. And next vacation you'll come to Boston to stay with us," said Michael. "Or you'll come back here," Ethan replied. "We'll definitely come back," Jason assured. Jennifer approached Ethan to say goodbye. "Ethan, thank you for giving me the chance to know who you've become. Thank you for giving me life, Mom. You're an incredible boy, far better than I deserved. You do deserve it. Everyone deserves love and forgiveness." Jennifer hugged Ethan tightly, knowing there was still a long road ahead to fully rebuild her relationship with her son, but grateful for the opportunity. "Richard," she said, turning to her ex-husband, "thank you for taking such good care of Ethan. Thank you for finally giving me the chance to know him. Take care, all of you, and keep me updated on everything." After everyone left, Ethan was visibly sad. "Dad, is it always like this? We're happy when the family's together and sad when we part?" "Yes, son. But that's what makes the time together even more special." "When will we see each other again?" "Next school break. And until then, we'll talk to them every day." "Dad, can I tell you something?" "Of course. I think I'm the luckiest kid in the world." "Why?" "Because I have the best dad, the best grandma, the best siblings, and even a mom who's learning to love me again." Richard smiled, touched by his son's words. "And I think I'm the luckiest dad in the world." "Why?" "Because I have the best son anyone could ask for. Even though I came from the streets?" "Ethan, you didn't come from the streets, you came from love. Where you were born or where you grew up doesn't define who you are. What defines you is the love you carry in your heart." Grandma always said that too. "Because it's true. And you have so much love in your heart, son." The following months were about adjusting to their new family routine. Ethan continued excelling in school, both in regular subjects and in art. His teachers often praised not just his talent, but his kind and cooperative personality. One day, Ethan came home more excited than usual. "Dad, Grandma, I have news." "What news?" they asked in unison. "The school is holding an exhibition at the City Museum, and they chose 3 of my drawings to display." "That's wonderful, my grandson," said Grace, hugging Ethan. "I'm so proud of you, son," said Richard. "And there's more. The teacher said a journalist might interview me." "An interview about what?" asked Richard. "About art, about my story, about how art changed my life." Grace and Richard exchanged worried glances. They weren't sure if it was a good idea to share Ethan's story publicly. "Ethan, are you sure you want to do this interview?" asked Grace. "Why? Is there a problem?" "There's no problem, son. We just want to make sure you're comfortable with it," Richard explained. "I am. I want people to know that even if you come from a hard place, you can still achieve good things if you have support and love." "What if someone speaks badly about you or our family?" "Then it's because they didn't understand the story. We can't control what others think, but we can control how we react." Richard was impressed by Ethan's mature response. The boy had developed remarkable emotional wisdom for his age. "All right, son. But let's talk to the journalist first to make sure he treats your story with respect." Deal. The exhibition at the museum was a major event for the city. Ethan was nervous, but also excited to see his work displayed in such a prestigious space. "Ethan," said the museum curator, "your work shows impressive emotional maturity. How did you develop this style?" "I think I learned to draw what I feel, not just what I see." "And what do you enjoy drawing the most?" "People. Especially happy people, families, children playing, things that remind me the world can be beautiful." During the interview with the journalist, Ethan told his story simply and honestly, without drama or self-pity. "Ethan, what was the hardest moment of your life?" "I think it was when Grandma Grace got sick. I was so afraid of losing her." "And the happiest?" "When I found out I had a father and siblings who loved me." What would you say to other children going through tough times? That there's always hope, that there are good people in the world willing to help, and that they're special, even if they don't always feel like it. And for the adults, Ethan thought for a few seconds, that sometimes children just need attention and kindness, and that small gestures can change a whole life. The article was published in the local paper and quickly spread across social media. Ethan's story touched many people who sent messages of support and love. "Dad, look at all these messages," Ethan said, showing the comments on the online article. "People connected with your story, son." "Thank you for reminding us that family is about love, not blood," Ethan read. "That's so beautiful." It's true. Your story shows family can be built in many ways. A few weeks later, Ethan got a special call. It was Emily. "Ethan, did you see the article about you?" "I did. What did you think?" "I thought it was beautiful, and I'm proud to have such a wise brother." "Thanks, Emily." "Ethan, can I tell you something?" "Of course." "You inspired me to do volunteer work here in Boston. I started helping underprivileged kids with their homework." "Really? That's great." "And Michael and Jason are helping too. Michael is coaching soccer for boys in the slums, and Jason is distributing books in underserved communities." "That's amazing. I'm so happy." "It's all because of you, Ethan. You taught us we have to give back the blessings we receive." After hanging up, Ethan told Richard and Grace about his siblings' social projects. "See, my grandson, your kindness is spreading," Grace said. "It's like Grandma always said, one good deed inspires another." "I'm so proud of all of you," Richard said. At the end of that year, Ethan was invited to join a special city project, an art education program for at-risk children. "Ethan, we'd like you to be our youth ambassador for the project," the coordinator explained. "What would I have to do?" "Visit schools, talk to children, show them how art can be a tool for social change." Ethan looked at Richard and Grace for guidance. "What do you think?" "I think it would be a wonderful opportunity for you to help other children," Richard said. "But only if you want to, my grandson," Grace added. "I do. If my story can help others, then it's worth sharing." The project was a success. Ethan visited dozens of schools, always accompanied by Richard or Grace, sharing his story and teaching basic drawing techniques. "Kids," he would say during his talks, "you're all artists. You just need to discover what your art is." "But what if we don't know how to draw?" some child would ask. "Art isn't just drawing. It can be music, dance, theater, writing, even the art of making people laugh or feel good." "How did you learn to draw so well?" "By practicing a lot and having people who believed in me. My grandma always said talent is like a little seed. It needs water and sunlight to grow." "What water and sunlight?" "Practice and encouragement. If you practice and have people who believe in you, you can achieve anything." One of the schools Ethan visited was particularly underprivileged. Many children didn't have proper school supplies and some were clearly struggling at home. "Principal," Ethan said to the school's director, "can I bring art supplies for these kids?" "That would be wonderful, Ethan, but you don't have to." "I want to. My dad always says when we're blessed we should share with those in need." "You're a special boy." "I'm not special. I just learned that helping others makes you feel good." That night, Ethan talked to Richard about the school he'd visited. "Dad, did you see how happy those kids were just to get colored pencils and paper?" "I did, son. It reminded me of how I felt when Grandma managed to buy me a new notebook." "And how did you feel?" "Like the richest boy in the world." "Because you understand the value of things, Ethan. You know what it's like to have little, so you appreciate every achievement." "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Can you help me start a project to provide school supplies for underprivileged kids?" Richard smiled, proud of his son's initiative. "Of course I can. Let's talk to Grace and plan something great." "Can we ask my siblings for help too?" "Great idea. It can be a whole family project." They created the Coloring Dreams project, which collected school supplies and brought art workshops to underprivileged schools. Emily, Michael, and Jason helped from Boston, organizing drives at their schools. "Ethan," Michael said during a video call, "our project has already helped over 500 kids." "That's amazing. I'm so happy. And the best part is other people are starting similar projects in other cities, Emily added. Grandma always said kindness is contagious, Ethan replied. Your grandmother is very wise, Jason agreed. On Ethan's 13th birthday, the whole family gathered again in New York City. This time, even some friends from the slum were invited to the party. Ethan, Richard said during the celebration, a year and a half ago when we met, I was a lost and bitter man. You taught me that true wealth lies in love and family. And I learned it's always worth believing in people, Ethan replied, even after everything you've been through. Especially after everything I've been through. If I hadn't believed in you that day on the street, none of this would have happened. Grace watched the scene with tears in her eyes, remembering the baby she'd found in the church so many years ago. Grandma, why are you crying? Ethan asked. From happiness, my grandson. From so much happiness. Do you regret anything? I do. Not having a camera to capture all the happy moments we've shared. Ethan smiled and ran to his room, returning with a wrapped gift. Happy birthday to you too, Grandma. But today is your birthday, not mine. It's our birthday, because 13 years ago you gained a grandson and I gained a grandmother. Grace opened the gift and found a digital camera. Ethan, how did you get the money for this? I sold some drawings. Now you can photograph all the happy moments we still have ahead of us. Grace hugged Ethan tightly, too moved to speak. Grandma, can I ask you something? Of course, my grandson. If you could go back in time, would you do everything the same? I would, Ethan. Every hard moment, every sleepless night, every worry. It was all worth it to get here. I'd do it all the same too. Even going hungry, even being cold, because all of it brought me to you. That night, after everyone had gone to sleep, Ethan stayed on the porch looking at the stars. Richard walked over. What's on your mind, son? How funny life is, Dad. Why? Because a year and a half ago I was just a street kid who didn't know his father. And today, I have a beautiful family, a lovely home, I go to a good school, and I can even help other kids. And you think that's funny? I think it's miraculous, and it makes me wonder how many other kids are out there, waiting for their miracle. Is that why you want to keep helping? Yes, because I know what it's like to be lost and alone, and I know how good it feels when someone reaches out to you. Ethan, can I ask you something? Sure. If you could give advice to the kid you were a year and a half ago, what would you say? Ethan thought for a few minutes. I'd tell him not to lose hope, that even when everything seems lost, there's someone in the world who will love you exactly as you are. And what would you say to the man I was a year and a half ago? I'd say family isn't about being perfect. It's about loving and being loved, flaws and all. Richard hugged Ethan, knowing that boy had changed, not just his life, but everyone's around him. Ethan, you know I love you very much, right? I do, Dad. And you know I love you very much too? I do, and you know what? What? That day, when you offered me your last dinner roll, you didn't just save me from hunger. You saved my soul. How so? You reminded me there was still kindness in the world, and that I could still be a better person. You've always been a good person, Dad. You were just lost, and you helped me find my way. We helped each other find our way, because I was lost too. But now we're home. We are, and we'll always be together. Always, son. Always. End of story. Now tell me what you thought of this story of overcoming and family love. Do you believe Ethan made the right choice by forgiving everyone? Which lesson touched you the most? Leave your honest thoughts about this emotional journey. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more stories that speak straight to the soul.